There are so many fantastic moments from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but it's really hard to top this.
For Frodo.
What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I've got my review of the new Lord of the Rings film entitled The War of the Rohirrim. This is an animated Lord of the Rings film, and before I give you guys my thoughts, be sure to hit that like button, comment your expectations for this down below, as well as your personal thoughts if you've seen the movie as of watching this video, and of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. So, when it comes to Lord of the Rings, I adore that trilogy. I've rewatched it a couple of times over the past few years. It's an all-timer, all right? We all know that. It's one of, if not the best film trilogies ever made. The Hobbit films, I can kind of go with or without. I saw two of them, actually all of them in theaters except for the first, and I enjoy them for what they are, but they are a step down from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Coming into this, we've got a film set 200 years before Bilbo gets the ring, and this film is technically an anime film set within the world of Middle-earth. And I'm just going to dive right in with some of my pros first, and I'll start with the animation style. As someone who hasn't watched a lot of anime in their life, I was a little on the fence about this as an idea because it's just a hard sell for someone who's never fully bought in. And I can say confidently the animation is one of the film's biggest strong suits. It was truly unique and allowed for this new vision within Middle-earth to be seen. I've never really ventured into much anime, but I can say that the animation in this film specifically was really beautiful, and I feel like it's catered to Middle-earth in a sense that you can do so much with these grand landscapes. The Middle-earth franchise has always excelled at creating these fantasy worlds that are so expansive, and it's really easy to buy into the large scale and the grand scope of Middle-earth through this film. And to me, the animation actually aids that. It especially works in certain aerial scenes where we've got shots from above. It really just shows, hey, the animation here is benefiting the story, if anything. And with animation, obviously we don't have live action performances, but we do still have the voice acting performances, and there are a few that really stand out. Brian Cox as Helm is probably the standout to me. He just has one of those voices where like the dude speaks and immediately you're just a little more intrigued, even if it's by 10% more than if it was just another random guy delivering this deep booming voice performance. Well, Brian Cox has one of the best voices maybe in Hollywood. I haven't even seen Succession, and I know that. And The War of the Rohirrim provides us with a story that's separated from The Ring entirely. Like, this is its own one-off story in Middle-earth, and that benefits the film because it doesn't feel like it is tied down to having to, you know, fit in with the canon of Middle-earth. Now, there are some nods, mentions, and little references to characters or set up for later films, you know, the trilogy potentially even. There's nods and references for fans, but the entire story doesn't revolve around having to fit into a timeline. Like, that's a big problem with a lot of other big franchises nowadays. They just can't figure out how to detach themselves from the original trilogy or the original run of films. And here in Lord of the Rings, they seem to have found the way to make their own story detached from everything. And they could make 10 more of these types of movies. They could do them live action, anime, it doesn't matter. This is a world they've now proven where they can go and have someone make their own individual story set within the world, but not tied down or burdened by the fact that it's a Lord of the Rings movie. And I'd say my favorite element of this film, aside from the animation, is probably the score. We get to hear Howard Shore's iconic theme reused from that Lord of the Rings trilogy, and hearing that, you know, blaring on the sound system in a theater, automatically gonna give me full body chills. I mean, the music from the Lord of the Rings trilogy is out of this world. To me, music in films is a game changer, and Howard Shore's iconic theme that's used here a couple times in the movie really does just make scenes even more impactful. Now, at a technical level, I can praise this movie for its animation style, and of course, I commend it for being its own standalone story in Middle-earth. A lot of times franchises are burdened again by having to tie into a certain timeline, and that's not the case here. But at the same time, I do think this movie has its fair share of flaws, and maybe the biggest is the fact that I was never grabbed by this main plot. And a major part of that is because there isn't really a particularly interesting character across the board that stands out or makes me want to root for them. I look at the other 6 live-action Middle-earth films, and there's always a handful of characters that I'm like fully behind. I understand where they're coming from, and I root for them, and I even see, you know, the villains in those films, and I'm like, okay, I hate this thing or entity or this person, and I want them to be taken down, taken to justice, right? It's like a classic tale of good versus evil, and in this movie, a lot of the characters were just paper thin and not really developed enough. I also found the main catalyst of this entire movie to be beyond goofy. There's a fight between two characters, and I don't know if it was going for silly. I don't think it was, which makes it worse. But it was like unintentionally funny to me sitting there in the theater watching this go down. I was like, this is just so goofy and cheesy, frankly. And the result of this altercation that I'm referring to leads to some irrational behavior from one character. I couldn't get on board with where this movie unfolded from there. I'm often frustrated by this media trope where there's two characters who disagree strongly on a topic, but instead of having a civil conversation where they have a little compromise on both sides, they both decide to just go fully nuclear with it, and then chaos just ensues. It bothers the hell out of me. It just doesn't make any sense. It's illogical, and I can't. This movie frustrated me because of that, and it just kept sort of adding up these little frustrations I had with writing decisions for character choices. I was just like, this is irritating me more than anything. There's a father-daughter relationship that's supposed to be the heart of this film, and I found it to be pretty underdeveloped. Like, in terms of character work in this film, their relationship's probably the best this movie has to offer, but even then, it's a little weak in my opinion, and you never really buy in the way you should. And like, the main villain character of this film, I believe his name is Wolf, he's a coward, and he's so pathetic and just dumb that I was never afraid of him. I was just irritated with him the entire movie, and I don't know why anyone ever even paid any attention to this loser. This was just one of those movies that frustrated me. But maybe the biggest issue I take with this movie is it's called The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. It should be called The Lord of the Rings, A Couple Tiny Battles of the Rohirrim, because there is no real war going on here, and if so, we don't fully see that. The battles in this movie were nowhere near the caliber of the other live-action films, and even then, there aren't even many battles. It's kind of like these tiny little fight sequences with a group of soldiers, but we never really see an actual full-on battle, let alone an ongoing war here. And I kind of question the title of the movie. And I'm not saying by any means that I need a Lord of the Rings film to have all this action, but War of the Rohirrim, you would think, okay, stuff's going down. Not really. So as a whole, there are some positives to take away from this movie. The biggest maybe being that Middle-earth is a universe where you can tell these one-off stories in movie form, TV form, animated or live action, it doesn't matter, but it's a world where there's still so much story to play around with. But at the same time, you gotta give us a little more depth here and deliver on characters and story. And that unfortunately was lacking here. Like, I think there's an idea at the core of this movie that probably works really well. It just falters in execution, never really fully commits like I hoped it would have. So as someone who's a stranger to anime, essentially, I thought the animation style clicked, and I wouldn't even mind seeing another anime Lord of the Rings film, but that animation style and the reuse of Howard Shore's score can only carry a movie so far. I never really bought into the characters or the story they were telling. Therefore, I walk out fairly disappointed and underwhelmed with this movie. It's wholly watchable, it's got its moments to shine, but it doesn't hold a candle to the other 6 live-action films, and because of that, I do think this could be one that's forgotten over the coming years. I didn't hate my time. If you're a fan of the other Middle-earth films, you'll get a kick out of this, especially the way they sort of set up what's to come, potentially. I don't want to say too much. That was something that you'll enjoy, but at the end of the day, I do think War of the Rohirrim is more forgettable than not, which is unfortunate. I'd give it like a 3 out of 5, but those are just my honest thoughts on this movie. Let me know yours in the comments down below, as well as your predictions, your expectations. If you have not yet seen it, hit that like button, subscribe to that notification bell, and stay tuned for more content coming very soon. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.